Good evening, everybody. Welcome to New Materials, New Mills, and New Workflows, Same Day Dentistry 2023. I am your host for the next hour, Dr. John Fluke. I am a technology editor and chief dental editor at Dental Products Report magazine here in the US. And I'd like to welcome everybody. I know that we have kind of a worldwide audience for this, so thank you all for taking time. I know that there's other things that you would probably prefer to do than listen to me, but I am very grateful for all of you to be here. And with that, let's get started. So this is what we're going to talk about tonight, is being able to create a restoration like this in your office on the same day that you prep it and be able to deliver it to your patients in a fairly easy and non-stress environment. This is an actual crown that was milled in my office and was cemented on a patient. And so this is the kind of thing that we're doing on a regular basis. And hopefully when we're done here in about 60 minutes or so, hopefully a lot of you will see the value in this and maybe think about checking this out too. So with that being said, let's get started with this. We've only got an hour, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time with an intro. Let's just get after this. So a lot of times in dentistry, we talk about efficiency. And for me, efficiency isn't money, but I would say it can be for some people. And time is not always money, but it, once again, can be. And it kind of depends on your perspective on this. For me personally, I look upon efficiency as a career saver. So there's an incredible value in efficiency. Nobody, not the dentist, not the assistant, not the patient, wants dentistry to take longer. Even with all the fears and apprehensions that go with it, even if dentistry was easy and not stressful, people would still not want it to take longer. The human experience is now so fraught with all of our time constraints that nobody wants to add more time or more appointments to their schedule. It's just that simple. Patients want faster, easier, and less appointments. So one of the original premises of the idea of same-day dentistry, it was built around the idea of making the practice more profitable. And I can tell you for sure, it can certainly do that, but I don't think in my mind, that's not the main focus. My philosophy has always been that if you provide good care and you treat your patients with respect, then the profitability and the money will follow. My take on same-day dentistry is that patients can save time with the same quality as before. And that's, to me, hugely important because I want to deliver to them at least as good as what they were getting before I started milling. So some doctors will take the efficiency and they'll say, okay, now that we've saved time, let's take that saved time and let's add procedures to the schedule. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you need to make more money, if you need to squeeze some more procedures into your day, you can certainly do that this way. It's just that at the point that I am in my career, I don't think that way. I'd rather relax for a few minutes. And I feel the important thing is that the patient understands that we have made this investment in the technology that saves them time and to provide them with the best possible care while at the same time making their lives easier. And because of that, I think there are just tons and tons of reasons why those of you that are listening should really consider bringing same-day dentistry with your indirect restorations into your office right now. So just so you all know a little bit about what I did and how I did it, this is where I started. In 1998, I started with the CEREC 2. And for those of you that probably have graduated maybe 2015 or before, that little vertical slot on the front of that machine is a floppy disk drive. And I say that with a bit of humor. Truly, I think most of you know what that is, but that is how the machine actually booted. Then in 2000, we upgraded to the CEREC 3, which looked like that. And then in 2003, I upgraded to the CEREC 3D with a new mill and the 3D software, which was kind of the original version of what we see today with some of our 3D treatment planning. The reason that I stopped doing milling was this. I purchased the CEREC 2, and it wasn't a small investment when I did it. Then, as you saw, came the upgrade to 3. And as an existing user, I was given a discount for the 3, but not a huge discount. Then along came 3D. And once again, I was given a discount, but it was an even smaller discount. And about the time that it was time to upgrade to the Blue Cam and the new mill, that's when I started to hesitate. I felt like I was on what I like to refer to as the upgrade treadmill, which is every time I purchased a system upgrade, I needed to make sure that the first thing I did was I started saving for the next upgrade. And these upgrades were not small dollars. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And the thing was, there was always this impending doom of, well, you don't have to upgrade, but before long, we'll stop supporting that. And I felt that because of the closed architecture of this system, I was kind of being held hostage. And if I didn't upgrade, my same day dentistry system would turn into a pumpkin. And I decided to step away at that point in time. I didn't feel like I was getting the return on investment. We were constantly, it seemed like, having to upgrade to new hardware. And so at that point in time, I decided to step away for a little while and just keep my eye on the product. I knew that I'd be coming back to milling. It's fun. We love doing it. The patients love it. There's a ton of really good reasons why you want to do this in your office. It's just that I got tired of the upgrades. And so I waited and I kept my eye on the systems out there. And when I got back into it, I was so excited about it, because now if you get into it, you've got incredible product choices, you've got incredible clinical results, and you've got just phenomenal ease of use. When I saw all that, I jumped back in with both feet. So briefly, for those of you that don't know this, just in case, you need 3 components to get started with this. One of those is optional. Getting your office ready to provide same-day dentistry is a whole lot easier than you might think. You need a digital scanner, which some people will call a digital impression system. You need design software that allows you to design the crowns and bridges, and you need a mill to fabricate those crowns and bridges. The optional piece is that design software. And I will explain to you why that can be optional once we get a little bit further into things. But at this point in time right now, we're going to go to our next slide, and we're going to talk about each of these individual components. So the digital acquisition systems. We have been doing digital acquisition in my office, digital impressions. If you don't count the time that I was originally doing same-day dentistry, I got back into digital impressions in 2008. So I wasn't out of the digital game very long. I just wasn't milling for a while. But digital impression systems now, statistics show us that they're in about 30% of offices in the US, and that number is continuing to grow. And just real quickly, here's why. We're not going to go over each of the defects that are shown in this picture, but when you are using impression materials, you can have a lot of problems, and some of those problems are very difficult to pick up. And because of that, the digital aspect of this just makes things a whole lot easier, a whole lot predictable, and a whole lot better. Now, when you see that previous slide with all those defects in the impressions, I want to tell you right now that I think over the years that we've been doing the dentistry the way I do it, which is for about probably like at least the last 20 years or so, we've been using state-of-the-art materials, state-of-the-art impression materials, lots of things like that. And I honestly think that we're a lot better at fixed prosthetics as a profession than we think. And why is that? So the statistics show us that for regular analog impressions. Current flaw rate is 64.5%. And current estimates say that the average general dentist does about 380 impressions per year. It's roughly about, the average is around 30 crowns a month. So it's about, 360 to 380 crowns a year. So if you think about the fact that 64.5% of those have some defect in them, that's 245.1 impressions per year that each office is sending to the lab that has defects. And I will say this, if you think that your lab will call you every time they see a defect in your impressions, think again. One of the great things about what I do at Dental Products Report is that I get to communicate with a lot of people in the dental industry, and not just doctors, but folks in all different aspects of the market. And one of the things that I've learned is if you use a small lab and you have a really good relationship with them, they'll probably call you if they've got a question. However, there are a lot of really large, high quality labs available to us. And those labs often assign technicians to cases just as they arrive. And that means you get a different technician, or you could get a different technician every case you send in, or at least you probably don't get the same tech every case. And that means they may not know the nuances of the way a particular doctor preps or the materials that we use. There's also the time factor when you think about it. If a lab has 245 phone calls to make to each office every year, they don't have the time for that. And they certainly don't have the time to call and then wait for the doctor to call back. So I think we can do better than this. I think that the system is working, and that's why I think we're better at this than we think we are. From personal experience, I can tell you that digital impressions make your preps better. When you see them magnified on the screen 20 or 30 times, it is eye-opening. Now, I do all of my work at either 5 or 5.5 magnification. And I use that high mag because I really feel like the better I see, the better I do. Yet when we started doing digital impressions, way back in 2008 with our iTero, I started to see things on the screen where I go back and I touch up a prep, and I still do that sometimes. However, I don't remember a lot of times where I'd look at an analog impression and see some little tiny nuance that I might go back and touch up. I mean, if it was a big defect, we'd probably take a new impression, or I might touch up a prep on something major, but not routinely. Seeing my preps on the screen has made me a better dentist. I mean, that's just plain and simple. So then we're going to look at CAD/CAM, which is computer assisted design and computer assisted magnification. So the advantages of this, number one, is the no impression aspect of that. I mean, patients love that aspect of it. You get a much better workflow. You get better margins and contacts simply due to the fact that that's digital. You don't get play in your dies. You don't get die stone that gets abraded on the contact area or on the preps. And that leads to almost always fewer adjustments. We routinely put things in the mouth with 0 adjustments. Now, I'm not going to say it always happens, but it is adjusting, and doing a lot of adjusting is really the exception to the rule once you get this down. And the other thing is patients really love the technology and they talk about it, and that just leads to more referrals, more patients, more dentistry. So it's good for the business as well. So here's the way the workflow part of this works. You do your preparation, and I highly recommend either a shoulder or a chamfer. And the reason for that is anything that you can do that gives you a really clear margin is best to be picked up digitally. Then we either use laser troughing, or you can use retraction cord, although we don't use very much retraction cord anymore, or you can use Vocos retraction paste, and that's what that looks like. It's a material that you inject into the sulcus, you leave it sit for a couple of minutes, it expands, it has a hemostatic agent in it, it's obviously really clear to see, and then depending on whatever you use for that retraction, if you need it, Then you remove your retraction paste or your cord, or with laser, you don't need to remove anything. You go straight to your digital scan, and then you either do your temporary fabrication or in-office milling and fabrication on that same day. Now, on those last two bullet points, I want to make myself really clear. When I say temp fabrication, what I'm talking about is some offices don't want to cut down, or I'm sorry, some offices want to cut down on the time between prep and cement. And once you get a few cases under your belt, same day is really pretty easy. But some people actually prefer to do what they call next day crowns or next day delivery. And that's fine. I mean, there's nothing at all wrong with that. The important part of this is to make the technology fit your practice and your style, rather than you having to fit the style of the system or the device. So one of the great things about today is how connected we are. People don't have to stay in your office if they don't want to. People can sit in a dental chair or in your reception room and wait while you design and mill, but you can also let them leave and text them whenever the work is done, or you can slot them in for a seat the same day later in the afternoon. Some patients may want to stay, but in our area, there's a lot of small shops and also one large shopping center in close proximity to our office. Patients leave, run errands, do shopping or whatever, and they still get their same day dentistry. We can either just text them if we've got open time, or we can just set them up. Just be back in the office at 2 this afternoon or whatever it is. So the nice thing about that is that even if a patient has to be in a temporary, if you're doing like next day dentistry, they're not in those temporaries for 3 weeks. But even if you don't want to do same day, you can certainly lower your overhead and increase patient satisfaction by doing just in time, next day, same day, whatever you want to do. And the other way is that you can also do quadrant dentistry for this, where you prep for the crown, and if there are restorations that affect the contacts, you do those, then you scan for the crown. Then if you've got other restorations, you do those while another team member designs and mills, and then you can cement the crown after doing the final polish on the restorations. It's simply a more efficient use of a patient's time, and many patients are absolutely thrilled to get all of their dentistry or a lot of dentistry done in one appointment. So let's take a look now for those of you that really aren't familiar with the process or wanting to know more about, okay, I'm interested, John, but what do we do? Is you decide on same day or rapid turnaround next day or whatever before your appointment. And that's critical. And this is especially when you're starting. Okay, so I always say take a pre-op impression just in case. If you need to make a temp, if something goes sideways, it's nice to have the parachute of the ability to make that temporary. Then you prep. Once again, shoulder chamfer is huge. Clear marginal delineation, and with that at or slightly above the height of the gingiva. The great thing about a lot of our materials today is that they're so aesthetic that we don't have to bury margins under the gingival tissue anymore to hide the ugliness of the margin. Now you can leave things either right at the gingival crest or even a 1/2 mil or 1 mil above the gingival crest, and the restorations are more or less invisible, and that's huge. You laser troughing if you need it, or cord or Boco's retraction paste. Then you scan, and then you mill. But there's no disgrace in these 2 appointments. The first thing I want you to do is to work this out from the bench. And that means getting your comfort level, before you start doing these live. Whenever we incorporate a new technique or a new technology into the office, especially something that has a schedule impact like this, we always bench test it a few times first, and that way we know it absolutely works. So if you don't give yourself adequate time, if you don't give yourself, when you're first doing these, a little extra time in your schedule just in case, then if something goes sideways, human nature is to jump back and do it the old way. So You don't want to do that. You want to give yourself adequate time, realize that there's going to be mistakes and hiccups. 50% of new drivers have a collision in their first year of driving. Average number of first steps a child takes before they fall is 1 when they're learning to walk. However, everybody walks and drives every day. So the thing is to give you time, more time than you think you might need, and then give yourself time to learn. That is really, really important. So whenever we went live with doing this, we talked it up to a few of our patients, and we even went so far as to kind of discuss the procedure a couple times in the days leading up to it with the team, and we would even call the patient on occasion. Gives everybody a comfort level with it. And then we got the patients really fired up about doing this. They were excited about something new, helping the office. We selected patients that had easy cases. We selected patients that were already fans of the office, that love technology. And then we just went the extra mile for them. So the main thing is practice, figure it out, work out all the bugs ahead of time, pick an easy case, an easy patient, let them know that this is going to be a major change in your practice and you need them to help you with it. Give yourself some extra time. And if it doesn't go well, you've got time to get yourself back on track. And if it does go well, you've got a couple of extra minutes to celebrate with your team. So it's not really that difficult to do at all. It's just a matter of jumping in and doing it. So laser troughing, really quick, it's just better, faster, easier than cord. 1 to 1.2 watts on the continuous wave setting is the one I like. 400 micron gap is what you create with these laser tips. It takes you about 60 seconds to do this. It's incredibly efficient when you're doing multiple units. It's also incredibly efficient if you're doing, some direct restorations and a crown, because you can trough, and the laser troughing stays that way for a couple of days before it starts to change. So that allows you to completely finish a crown prep, get it scanned, and then go ahead and do your restorations. Or if you're so inclined, do the restorations and then go back and scan. And if you do, you know that you've still got proper margin exposure if you've needed to go subgingival. Then you polish these, and there's lots of polishers out there. I happen to like the Ultradent Jiffy polishers. This is not an ad for Ultradent. I just happen to like their product. It does a really, really good job with this. You don't need to invest in an oven right out of the box either. That's the thing. Fire and stain and glaze on this, you don't necessarily have to do that. There is also a new zirconia material on the horizon that doesn't need to be fired, and I have tinkered with that just a little bit. I don't have a ton of experience with it, but in just a second, I'm going to talk about a new material that's out there that I really, really like, and it doesn't need to be fired either. The zirconia blocks that I'm talking about, though, are the Perfect FS chairside zirconia. And I've heard really good things about them. We've done a couple of cases with them. I like them, but I'm going to talk about something that right now really has tripped my trigger. Really quickly, these are the Ultradent polishers. These are the Jiffy polishers. They make some for composites and some for fixed prosthetics. So make sure you get the ones that are made for porcelain. There's several different types, different kits, but they all work super well. So let's take a look now. I said I was going to talk about a material that I like, and I am. So let's talk about a clinical case that we did recently, and I'll share with you the case, and then I'll share with you the materials that we used on this too. So patient comes into the office, got a broken tooth on the lower left. That was their chief complaint when they called. Patient's a long-term patient in the office. He has a history of bruxism and clenching. He's also got a history of obstructive sleep apnea. He's been in the practice for over 20 years. In that time in the practice, he's broken several different teeth because of the whole clenching and grinding thing that he goes through. But the other thing is he's a techie guy and he absolutely loves leading edge healthcare. So when we discussed the idea of doing this with him, he was really, really fired up about it. So we checked him out, bring him in for an exam. The tooth has, there's no symptoms, any kind of pulpal pathology. In this tooth, he's got a bonded inlay that's failed. And the thing is, he's a busy professional with a schedule that doesn't really allow for multiple visits. So let me explain why this fits so well with the idea of same-day dentistry. This guy can afford the best dentistry. And the reason he does that is because he works a lot. And it's a big catch-22 in his life. He makes a good living, but he never has time to spend it because he's always working. So seriously, though, he's a great patient. He's interested in doing what it takes to keep his teeth for a lifetime. When he originally came into the office, tooth number 19, it had a huge amalgam in it, and it had started to break down. At the time, I recommended an indirect bonded porcelain inlay, which we did with one of my same-day dentistry systems back in the day. And I told him I wasn't sure how long we were going to get out of this, but it was a lot better for his tooth than doing a crown. And he agreed with that, so we went with it. And one of the things you have to be cognizant of when you're planning a same-day case is the concept, too, of controlling gingival hemorrhage. During bonding procedures, there are three things that we fight: saliva, blood, and crevicular fluid. And the nice thing about these aesthetic materials that I talked about a couple of minutes ago was that you can leave them above the height of the gingiva if you want to. That way you don't end up with that boggy purple tissue that you can get, from those old PFM crowns that we used to do. So being able to keep the margins above the height of the gingiva means there's no chance of staining from blood during the process. And I love that. So we looked at this guy and we said, you know what? We talked to him about it and we just said, the inlay has failed. This is an ideal case for same-day dentistry. So this is what we started off with. Big, old silver occlusal amalgam. And I apologize for the quality of the photo, but the quality of the photo goes back to state of the art at the time it was taken about 20 years ago. We took that out, and that was when we were almost done with the inlay prep. Tried the inlay in, we bonded that to place, and then in these photos, you'll see the wear and tear that number 19 has gone through over the years. So a patient calls, I've broken a tooth on the lower left, and he actually says it's that one we did the inlay on way back when. So he comes in, this is what he presents with now, okay? So you get the idea of how much of the tooth is gone. The lateral view here gives you an idea of how the distal margin presented itself at the evaluation appointment. One of the lucky breaks that I thought we got on this case is that the patient practically prepped close to half the tooth for me already. So you can see from these photos, the tissue's pretty healthy. We won't be fighting a lot of bleeding. The margins are going to stay super gingival. And there's, once again, the occlusal view, and then there's the buccal view. And you can see that we're going to try and keep everything super gingival here. So this is after the prep. So these last two photos, we kept everything super G, which makes it really easy to handle. Plus it makes it so much easier for the patient to maintain because they're not having to clean under the gum line. So we're ready then. We're going to scan these and start the design process. So we scanned this into our iTero system, checked the occlusal clearance in the software, and then the scan was opened in exocad, which is our design software. We designed it in exocad, and then we're going to send it to the DG Shape DWX 42W mill. So this is the scan, the impression scan of the prep. That's gauging the occlusion with the iTero system. This is an image of that prep now loaded into the exocad design software. Anything that you can do in a dental lab, you can do with exocad. So this is actually looking at the opposing occlusion against the prep. And we knew we had adequate clearance because we'd figured that out with the iTero. And then there's the design. And at this point in time now, you take that design and you send that to the mill. And in about 15 or 20 minutes, this is what you get. Keeping those margins super gingival was such a godsend for this. It makes it so easy. We didn't use laser. We didn't use cord. We didn't do anything. We just scanned it, milled it, and did this in a case with a material called Amber Mill Direct. Now, what is really cool about this is that Amber Mill's partnered with the mill company, DG Shape. So it's now Amber Mill by DG Shape. And this is an incredible material. It comes in a block size of 14. It wants wall thicknesses of 2 millimeters in the posterior. If you're familiar with milling at all, you're going to mill this in standard mode. You're not going to mill this in high-speed mode. And then once you've milled, you can polish this with those same Jiffy polishers. And then there's a material called Amber Glow, which is a polishing paste that you can use to put a really high gloss on this. Now, before I get into any more of this, let me tell you something. The really cool thing about this Amber Mill Direct is it is a lithium disilicate material. Only you don't have to fire it. It is already tooth shaded in the block form. So you mill the exact color that you want and it comes out. You never have to put this in an oven and it comes out incredibly aesthetic, just like any other lithium disilicate material that, you know, normally is purple before it's fired or violet. This is tooth colored. Once it comes out of the mill, you etch it with 5% hydrofluoric acid for 20 seconds, and then cement it with whatever the material of your preference is. We generally use Theracem from Bisco, but whatever you want to use to bond this in, whatever you've bonded your lithium disilicates in with, in any other case, can do the same thing right here. Current shades available for Amber Mill Direct, all of these, A1, A2, A3, A3, 5, B1, B2, C2, D2, W1, W2. Just a little photo to show you, but you can see at the top of this picture, the reason I put this picture in here was you can see the blocks, and those blocks are tooth colored. Right? It's pretty amazing. The other thing is they also can be or have gradient shading. So you can start with a darker, and then as you move to the incisal, it gets lighter. So it looks much more like natural teeth. So you get that really amazing differentiation in color and the aesthetics of lithium disilicates. So here's just a real quick, this is a photo that shows you the guide on the reduction for the different parts of the mouth. That stuff, so I mentioned the zirconia, the perfect. I've done a couple of cases with that. We've done probably 20 cases now with this Amber Mill Direct software, or I'm sorry, this Amber Mill Direct material, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I love this stuff. It's my favorite material right now. Love it, love it, love it. So let's talk now real quick about designing this and how we do this, and then we're going to talk about milling. So this is a webinar about milling and how easy it can be. It's not about software training, but I do want to just a little bit explain what we do with this. And I think it's important to know you've been practicing for a while and you have some experience with this technology. The slice of the market that we've done in the last 10 years is really, really incredible. In short, if you looked at CAD CAM 2010, 2015 even, it is, from a design standpoint, it is completely amazing what you can do. Anything that you can do with labs, you can do with design software now. So What you do is you scan it, and we happen to use iTero, but you can use any scanner. These are not closed systems. These are open architecture. So then you download the file to your design computer, import the file into whatever your design software happens to be. We use exocad. Design your case, save the design case to a file, and then open the design cases in your mill software. So it's really, really simple. You know, that this is just a, you know, a typical iTero case. And this is what exocad can do with it. And this is easy, easy, easy to do. And in a second, I'm going to talk about the training and a little bit on how easy this is to do, just so you all know. Once again, open architecture. And this is the thing, you don't have to be on that upgrade treadmill that I talked about earlier. You can take any of the digital impression systems that output to an STL file. You can then send that to any mill you want to, even 3D printers. You can do that. All this stuff is all interchangeable. So you're not locked in to one manufacturer, one system. You know, I was hesitant when I quit doing this, because I didn't, when I got off the upgrade treadmill, I was just tired of paying the extra money, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I looked at this long and hard, and when I saw what I could do with that DG Shape mill, I was just like all in. So now one of the questions I get about the designing, though, is, okay, so DG Shape came in and they taught you how to use that mill, but how did you get trained to design this? Well, this is a great story. I have several dental assistants. We got 4 dental assistants in the office. 2 of them had experience with Cerex in previous offices. They didn't feel like, you know, they could just take one apart and put it back together, but they were at least comfortable with it. And I wanted them to learn how to use exocad, but I didn't want to get their heads so full of design that then it made milling difficult, because they were thinking about too many things. So what I did was, and this is absolutely true, about 2 months before the mill came, I told them, go to YouTube, start watching videos. There are more videos on YouTube of people designing with exocad than you could possibly believe. About 2 months they spent watching these videos. We already had exocad installed in our conference room on the computer. So at lunch every day, the 2 assistants, Amanda and Delana, they would eat lunch, watch videos, and then design cases on existing patients. This was before the mill even showed up. So they're designing and then saving these cases. All the cases were scanned with one of the iTeros, so they could download the case super simply. And by the time Ian, who was the DG Shape trainer, showed up, they were really good at designing cases. So once you get the basics, I think then if you want to take some classes and learn how to design, you certainly can. But the initial learning this is so simple, you can learn it from watching a few videos. Now, the other thing is, let's say you don't want to do any design, or you don't want to purchase design software. Okay, there's now digital design services for people that either don't want to design, or if you don't have time to design. So I'm going to take a look at this. I know what you're thinking of is you're thinking, okay, I get this, but then if I have a staff member do it, what if we've got a day where that staff member is sick, or the staff member decides to leave, or we have problems, like the computer that does the design software has a problem or whatever. Well, here's the deal. There's a couple of them I've mentioned here, Evident and Full Contour, but there are several of these companies out there that actually allow you to send them the cases. They are then forwarded to experienced technicians who will then design the case and send it back to you. So basically you scan it, you send it out, they send it back, and then you mill it. It is simply that easy. You can actually, depending on how you want to do this and what you want to pay for the services, you can even get designs back within an hour if you want to. Then you take that design file and you fabricate it in your in-office mill, and then you either polish it or glaze it if you want to. So what I love about all of this is this lets you do things your way. As I said earlier, you get the system to work for you, not you work for the system. And these are basically digital dental labs. If once again, if you've got a weird case and you just feel like, this is maybe beyond what we want to do with our in-house design, send it to one of these digital design places and they will take care of you. It's a great thing to have in your back pocket or in your front pocket if you don't want to design at all. So now that I've kind of got you spun up on the scanning, the prepping, a little bit on the design and how easy that is, let's look at milling, and let's look at the DG shape mill that I have, the DWX42W wet mill. A lot of people ask me, John, there's a lot of mills out there. It's hard for me to figure out exactly which one I want. How did you choose DG shape? I chose DG, excuse me, by the way, because of their track record. My grandpa Fluky owned a grocery store in the Kansas City area, and he was a bit of a philosopher. And one thing he told me was, son, never reinvent the wheel. And what he meant by that was, if somebody's created a system or a device that works, use it. You don't have to, do it yourself. So when I decided to make the jump and really get into same-day dentistry, I made a conscious effort not to reinvent the wheel. My thought process was, okay, I'm a dentist. I know a lot about clinical dentistry, but I don't know a whole lot about the milling side of this. So I went to the dental lab industry. And because of that, I started my product search by first asking people that knew the dental lab space, what are the mills they're using in the lab space? If you go and you look at the dental lab industry, you will see a ton of mills from DG shape. As a matter of fact, I would be willing to bet you that a lot of you listening to this have actually placed crowns that were milled on a DG shaped mill, and you didn't even realize it because the lab did it. Also, if you talk to people in the lab industry and you ask them about mills, one of the first companies they will mention is DG shape. Now, remember, the environment of a commercial lab is a lot more strenuous than it is in a general dentist's office. Those mills run all the time. And if they're not running, the lab is losing money. Because of that, dependability is huge for labs. And if a lab says that a DG shaped mill holds up well for their usage, pretty well bet that it's going to hold up pretty well in a general dentist's office. But it's not all about dependability. If your lab uses the mill, then you also can bet that they're getting great restorations, great margins, great finish. Because if they send something out that's not right, a dentist is going to send it back. And if they're not getting good results, the labs are not going to buy those mills. So one of the other things that I wanted was ease of use. And with 4 assistants, 6 hygienists, 3 front office members, and 3 doctors, we don't need to learn how to fly a 747. We wanted something simple. And that was what we got with DG shape and the mill. This whole thing is open architecture, and this is an incredible advantage. No matter what digital impression system you use, you can utilize it in this workflow. So you get to pick and choose what works best for you. If you're currently in an analog world or still using impression material, you can try different digital systems and find the one that's right for you. I love the fact that, use what you want. That's the whole big bit of this. And I can tell you that we're rapidly closing in on this being a mainstream technology. Mainstream technologies are what patients know about and expect. So they come into an office wanting something, and they've heard about it, friends have talked about it, they've seen it on the internet, they've seen it on TV or whatever, and they want it. It used to be that way with digital x-rays. Now if a patient walked into an office and you used film, most patients would say, why isn't this digital? So a few years ago, personal experience, I had some crowns done on me. They were done analog. I couldn't keep the temps in my mouth to save my life. So I figured that I was lucky because I'm a dentist and I had access to unlimited temporary cement. But if I struggle with temps, so do my patients. So let's just get rid of them if we can. So this picture, this is the day the mill actually arrived in my office. We've got a conference room and we decided to put it in there. We thought it would be easy that way. There's lots of room. If patients wanted to come watch, the conference room is big, it's airy, it looks nice. It's just better than having this in the lab. And the second reason we put it in the conference room is for training. We hold our morning huddle in there. So we've got the schedule up on the wall with a projector. And we just thought this would be great for training. Not only for the training of the day with the team from DG Shape, but also when we're spinning other assistants up, they can see it up on the wall, they can understand it. The other thing I want you to know is this is the way the mill came into my office on Thursday, okay? So a bit of a funny story on this. Ian was coming out to do training on Monday, and he and I were emailing and texting before the mill was there, and it showed up and I see this thing and I text him and I'm like, can I unbox it and look at it? And his reply was, you know, if you really want to see what's in there, Fluky, you can, but I think it'd probably just best be if you left the unboxing to me. And I'm pretty sure that he realized if I started unboxing it, the end result would just make his job harder. So it stayed right there until Monday. And Ian showed up on Monday morning and the practice was going. The two assistants and myself were ready for training, but everybody else in the office was working. Ian shows up, he starts working away, and before too awful long, he calls us. So we go in, and this is what we find is he's got the mill all set up. The mill is running. It was pretty amazing. So here's Amanda. Delena's putting a block in the mill. That's Ian standing there. This is our design, or I'm sorry, our milling software up on the screen in the conference room. And then this is Amanda. She's actually nesting a crown in the milling software. So as you can tell from these pictures, we're kind of a laid back office. That Jolly Roger flag is from Talk Like a Pirate Day, which is every September 19th. And we break that out. One of the reasons I wanted you to see this particular picture is you'll notice that on that milling software, you'll see in red, there's 1, 2, 3. Those correspond to spots where you can put a milling block. This mill can mill 3 restorations simultaneously. Now you don't have to, but for a busy practice or maybe a situation where a patient is having multiple units done, it's nice to be able to know you can mill more than one when you need to. We don't routinely mill more than one at a time, but we certainly can. We milled 2 simultaneously this week. I mean, the nice thing about that is you can get it started, walk away, let the mill work. So I love these 2 pictures. I don't think Amanda and Delana knew I took these, but they were both so excited on the milling the first restoration that they were both videoing the whole process after they designed and got this thing ready to go. So that's the kind of excitement that your team gets out of this. And then just to show you, this is one of the first cases that came out of the mill. Now, what we did was we milled things side by side. So we wanted to make sure this was going to work well. And because of that, we were sending cases to the lab, but we were also milling. Then when the case came back from the lab with the digital model, that we, digitally fabricated model, we tried them on to see how they fit compared to the lab fabricated. And they fit like a doggone glove. It is really, really incredible. Now, I love the idea of open architecture, and I love the idea that you're not locked into a single manufacturer anymore. As I've mentioned, you're not forced to get everything from a single source. You can use the digital impression system you like, you can use the design software you like, and then you can use those with the DG shape mill. The one part of this that I haven't mentioned yet is the flexibility you get with regard to changing or upgrading things. For example, in our office, we have 2 different digital impression scanners. They happen to be 2 different models from the same manufacturer, but that doesn't matter. If you happen to have one scanner and you decide to get a second one, if you find a model that you happen to like better from a different manufacturer, buy it. That new unit will work with DG shape just as well as your first unit. Or if you only have need for one unit, but you discover a different model or a different manufacturer you like better, you can buy the new one, sell the old one, and the new one will output the files that work just as well as before. So there's no need to be concerned if you want to make changes. Whatever works for you and suits your office workflow will fit with this because of the open architecture, and I love that. The same aspect of the open architecture also goes to the materials. There's a lot of different materials available out there to suit any clinical situation, whether it's strength or aesthetics or both. Those materials are out there. As I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to get my hands on more of those zirconia blocks. Maybe, I'm not sure if I mentioned this or not. One of the great things about the Perfit zirconia is it doesn't need to be fired. You know, zirconia shrinks as it's being fired, but the Perfit blocks are already shrunk. So they're basically a 1-to-1. You mill, polish, and bond or cement. So you can use all kinds of different things. And we've got pictures here of traditional lithium disilicate with the kind of lavenderish purple that then changes to white once you fire it. You can buy blocks that are longer that also allow you to do bridges. So you can see that lithium disilicate bridge there. I love the options that you get with this device, whether it's single units, bridges, heck, even implant abutments. You have the option to have this mill do what you want it to do to fit your workflows. I'm really excited about this, and I'm really excited on where this is going. This is a quick example of the mill actually in use, and it's a really short video, but you can see they're actually milling 3 blocks there, and I think that's really cool. Something else you'll notice in this picture is there are several burrs. The mill actually uses different burrs depending on what is currently being done, and it's incredibly cool to watch this thing. Oftentimes patients will want to watch this, and they're just blown away by what they see. So this is actually milling an abutment, and you can buy an abutment kit for this. And then you can actually mill your custom abutments if you want to. Really, really cool stuff. So this next one, another one on scanning in a cool case I want to show you, and this is a cool case, but it's not really because of the amazing dentistry, but it's really about the management of the patient on this one. This particular patient's been in the practice a long time. He's a great guy. He's funny, always follows our recommendations, keeps his appointment, pays his bill. Basically, he's a model patient, and he's the kind of person you really like having in your practice, the kind of patient that you want to have refer their friends. So we did a crown on this gentleman on tooth number 30. About 2 to 3 months later, pain starts. Tooth ends up needing endo. Now, as we normally know, you would do a crown, or I'm sorry, when you've done a crown, you would just access through the crown, do the endo, and fill it with composite after the endo's done. But in this instance, we felt bad about doing putting a hole in a crown that we just did that looked really nice. And because of the patient, I thought, you know what, let's just make him a new crown. So this is another great thing about being able to make your own crowns. I told the patient, look, I'm not going to drill a hole in this. We're just going to cut the old one off. We're going to make a slice, crack it off. We'll make you a temporary. We'll do the endo. It was a 2-appointment endo, and then we'll do a new crown for you. And he was really excited about that. So what we did was we slotted the existing crown, took it off, Because the tooth was necrotic, we did it in 2 appointments. But when I took the crown off, when I slotted it, I didn't touch the margins. So before the second appointment, we still had the scan from the first crown. So we milled a new crown. Patient came in for the obturation, and when we were done with the obturation, my assistant held up the new crown in front of him and said, "Look what we have for you." And the gentleman was just stunned, and he wanted to know how we'd done that. So he explained, well, we've got this mill and we've got this ability to make crowns in the office. And when we cemented it, the patient kept saying to the assistant, "Can't believe you guys made this here." And I actually ended up having Delana come in and take a bow because she was the one that designed it and milled it. And the patient was really, really impressed. And we did that because we thought it was the right thing to do, and really for no other reason. But the mileage and the marketing that we got from that really exceeded the roughly $50 that it cost us to do the new crown, in-house. So, but I also want to add that Delana and Amanda really have a ball doing this. We make sure to let the patients know that we're doing these in-house, that they are the ones creating the crowns, and the patients are always impressed. It has added an incredible amount of excitement to the practice and to their jobs. They love what they're doing. These ladies are so much more talented than to just hand instruments and turn the vacuum off and on all day. And they've said repeatedly how much more they enjoy their jobs, and they value the compliments they get from patients simply because they can make crowns. So this is after laser troughing on this. Mark the margins, check the occlusion. That was actually the crown that I showed you at the beginning of this. That was the crown that we put on this gentleman. And he was, like I said, very, very happy. We're going to wrap up here with a couple of cases. This one was a 2-day case that we did in the office. So prepped one day, bonded the next. And the reason for that was it was 4 crowns. So we did tooth number 3 and 4. And then we also did the opposite side. So there's tooth 3 and 4 on the try-in bite wing. That's pre-bonding. We also did crowns on 13 and 14. And there's the pre-bond radiograph bite wing on those. And the patient was blown away. 4 crowns in about 24 hours. Absolutely, just an incredible thing for the patient to have done. And this is the bread and butter of what we do are these kind of cases. And this next one is a real bread and butter case that any general dentist out there is doing. Patient comes in for recare and is diagnosed with the need for a crown. They've got a broken amalgam. They return, and we do this case, in the same day. So we've got stunning aesthetics. You can pretty much find a block out there that suits any needs, no matter what you've got to do out there. And I know of offices that even will do endo and cement the final crown on the same day. They do the endo, do the buildup, go straight to crown prep, and it greatly reduces the time that the patient spends in their office. And for busy patients, that's an incredible value. So let's take a look at one more case. Patient comes in, I've broken a tooth, comes in for the triage appointment. Yep, you sure did, broken old amalgam. Tooth is weakened. You can see that crack going down the mesial marginal ridge with some recurrent caries around it. So we prepped this same day. You can't believe the amount of fun and the amount of enjoyment and the feedback that you get from patients when you do these kind of things. It just absolutely makes your day, and it makes their day. So there's the bite wing on that last one that we showed you. And this is the kind of stuff that we're doing day in and day out in the office. Now, I know I ran through a lot in the last 58, 59 minutes, but I really appreciate you all putting up with me. I hope that in just, some small way, I've helped you understand that whole world of in-office milling a little bit better. I want to leave you with one final thought, and that is dentistry can be stressful. Technology can be stressful. Our lives are very busy and our lives are stressful. But no matter how much success or how much stress or failure that you encounter, don't ever forget the things that are the most important to you, because life travels at an incredible speed. Things change overnight. Things change right in front of your eyes. And as Ferris Bueller said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around sometime, you might miss it. So I've got a dolphin trainer on the left. This is an older picture. The one on the right just signed an agreement to work for a NASA contractor after he finishes his aerospace engineering degree this May. So enjoy the ride, folks, and enjoy the opportunity to provide incredible stuff for your patients. Here's my contact info. I didn't have time for questions, and I apologize for that, but I've got my email address there at the bottom. So, feel free to email whenever you've got a question. I'm happy to get back with you. And thank you all for attending and for listening to me. I am really, really honored. Have a great night.